Hey, what's up, everyone? If you didn't see the last video about Holy Relic of Conviction, you can watch that first if you want to catch up on it. Really short video. The short of it, though, is that I tried out the poison version of Holy Relic of Conviction, kind of exploring ideas for builds that I want to play next league. And I'm just kind of going down the line of the things that people have discovered this league, trying to build up my mental library of what's out there. What I basically did is put together Baylor Mage's poison version that's using Dialas, that's using Ashes, Aegis Aurora, all that type of stuff. That's obviously a much higher investment setup. I want to look at this in terms of what can we do for a league starter. So what we did on stream yesterday is, also more defensively oriented. So that setup, of course, pretty much has a very low Fizz max hit. I think even at like a decent budget, he was still hitting like 10 to 12K Fizz max hit. And I wanted to solve that. Also looking at the lowest budget that I could get to. So this setup right here, you can already kind of infer a little bit. I went for a much lower budget setup, just trying to see what it feels like. So the original recording, the game volume was way too loud. So we're just gonna do a little voiceover here. Pretty much what I'm saying in the video as I'm talking is kind of showing off the defensive capabilities of the build. As shown here, the DPS is around 2.5 million. But it's poison 2.5 million, so it feels a lot better than that. It's not anything to really write home about, but it's pretty comfortable. It's pretty decent. The big thing here is I wanted to make sure that it was defensively oriented. Frankly, the offense is pretty easy to scale. Once you get a 23% quality gem, once you get an enhance, once you get ashes, all those type of things. And the prices on all those, if the economy next league kind of tracks, will come down pretty quickly a couple weeks into the league. So really all I'm focused on here is just having a build that is really comfortable in tier 16 maps, and then you can scale once you want to throw a little money into it. And that's what it looks like in a boss fight. So the big thing that you'll notice is that the clear does not look nearly as good as it did yesterday. However, this is actually significantly tankier. I guess didn't even trade anyone. I guess get a random whisper. As you can see, the clear is still pretty respectable. It's just not nearly on the level that we saw yesterday. Should be able to tank this just fine because of our max spell block. Pretty nice. And that's because we don't have the cooldown recovery rate that we had yesterday. The cooldown recovery rate is based on the quality of the gem. The breakpoints, I wrote them down right here, are 2, 14, 30, 52, and 82%. And most of the setups that you see are either at 52 or 82%. And so the way that it works, you can see that as we're hitting with our Lancing Steel of Spraying, it is triggering the Holy Relic of Conviction. It's doing the Nova. And then from the Nova, we have Chance to Poison. We're stacking physical and chaos damage through our Ghastly Eye Jewels the best that we can. And that's where our damage comes from. And the quicker we can trigger, the more damage that we can do, the more poison damage that stacks. And because we have kind of a lower trigger rate, because we only have the 20% quality, I'm just using a 20/20 gem right here. That's why our trigger rate and the top end of our damage is much lower. Like if I just focus on the trigger rate, we could quadruple our damage basically, but we can't do that on a very low investment. The only ways to do that really are Ashes, Diala, and an Enhance. So without really doing that, I guess you could do you could toss it in a in the helmet that gives you crazy quality as well, but you wouldn't really want to do that. Crest of Desire. So that's kind of like the setup that I'm doing here is I'm trying to keep it as budget as possible, just using the cheapest uniques, you know, Victario's Charity, Jeffrey's Crest. Jeffrey's Crest is mandatory, Jinx Juju, and so forth. And that's the kind of the quality of life that I want to focus on here, just pure defense on the budget. And then, of course, later on you can scale into something else. I will be exploring the options of what I want to scale into a little bit after that. But right now, I just want to focus on being able to face take pretty much everything and just have a very comfortable setup. And that's what we have right here. So that's the demonstration of the build and what it can do and what you can expect. Let's go over the POB here right now and what I'm proposing. All right, let's zoom in on POB a little bit. Put me in the corner because all we care about is what's actually going on here. What I've done in this setup right here is you want a fast trigger sword. Again, we're using Lancing Steel of Spraying. That's the main trigger. If you've played any cast on crit or anything right now, it is very popular for a reason. It just throws out a ton of projectiles. And with my flasks up, I'm actually attacking about 3 times a second. So that's about 60 hits per second, which actually allows us to very easily maintain Withering Touch, which is pretty cool. Basically max Wither stacks within a couple seconds, which is really cool. Yesterday, I tried everything I could on stream, every single wand attack and everything. And just frankly, nothing compares to Lancing Steel of Spraying. Of course, if this gets nerfed, we will be going back to the basic boring Cyclone. So this is kind of the backup if Lancing Steel gets nerfed. And honestly, if it does and we get forced to use Cyclone here, I probably just wouldn't play the build. Honestly, the build kind of just works because of how strong Lancing Steel is. It is way, way worse with Cyclone. Generally, just wouldn't recommend it. You have to be full melee range, and the damage doesn't happen asynchronously. The nice thing about Lancing Steel is projectiles are still going to come back, right? Like, I can shoot them out and still move and don't have to worry about, you know, don't have to worry about synchronously doing damage because they're still happening as I'm moving around, which is just an additional quality of life bonus right there. So we're doing that. We're going back into the depths of old school minion builds, and we're looking at Victariel's Charity. This is just a 1 elk shield that no one cares about, but it gives us life, res, chaos res, area of effective aura skills, which is nice. So our auras will affect our minions more easily, so we don't have to worry about 20/20 on our aura gems to make sure that it's basically hitting the full screen and affecting our minions, which is nice. And the really good thing here is 5% chance to grant a frenzy charge to nearby allies on hit. And the big thing here is, again, because we're hitting so often, again, we're hitting 60 times per second, we're actually very, very consistently giving our allies 100% uptime on all of their frenzy charges. It's not night and day in terms of the damage because charges for minions did get nerfed a little while ago, but it does bring us from 2.3 million to 2.6 million damage. So another, 13, 15% more damage is just really good to have. Jeffrey's Crest here, this is just mandatory +1 max number of summoned Holy Relics. This goes from 2 to 3 with the Holy Relic of Conviction. The other thing that I'm doing here that, everyone's going for Dialis, right? Dialis is the go-to. So number one thing, I'm looking at this in terms of a league starter. I'm looking in terms of this for as budget as I can make it. And Lightning Coil is just the go-to. Can be a little expensive the first couple days, but you can SSF farm the cards yourself if you want to, and the price goes down very, very quickly. And the big thing here is it helps our Fizz max hit. This is with my flasks turned off. I have a 14k Fizz max hit, which is relatively respectable. And then with my flasks turned on, giving me additional armor, I have a 17k Fizz max hit, which is just pretty darn solid. And that's a respectable number considering the budget. And I think that's really what you want to be aiming for like a tanky early, this is soft core defenses, of course, but soft core tanky league starter. These are kind of the numbers that I usually aim for. And less than that with the Dialas, you're just not gonna you're just not gonna compare. If we drag this in here, 9.5k Fizz max hit. Of course, your damage can absolutely skyrocket by getting the additional quality on the gem. You get that additional trigger rate. But the focus right here is just comfortable T16 farming and as tanky as possible. So, I'm going back to the old trusty. Lightning Coil is just, it's hard to not use the Lightning Coil. Boots here. So Inextricable Fate, these drop from Elder, and they're very, very common. They're very, very cheap. And the key here is you take reduced extra damage from critical strikes from poisoned enemies. And so this in combination with our other reduced critical strike, so Sanctum of Thought right here, and then we have the Armor Mastery for 30% here. So this is 60%. You just need at least a 40% roll on the Inextricable Fate, and then you are 100% critical strike immune. Or at least you don't take extra damage. If you get other effects from crits like Ignite or whatever, you'll still get that. But no extra damage from critical strikes if we use the Inextricable Fate. So that's just really, really nice. And it's still decent boots, right? It's got Chaos Res, Life, 30% movement speed. And the Grasping Vines is actually pretty nice too for slowing them down a little bit. I think these boots are kind of underutilized, and yeah, really good quality of life right there. So we're using those boots. Jinx Juju, Intelligence, Strength, Dexterity. This build needs stats really, really bad, particularly Dexterity. Dex is a pain in the butt to get in this build. So a Citrian Amulet, of course, is really nice. Chaos Res, increased effective non-curse auras, so just really good there. And then 10% of damage from hits is taken from your Spectre's life before you. So that's just 10% more max hit that you can take. Because of that, it's going to hit the Spectre's life before you, and that's just really good for your overall quality life, or just your life in general. So Jinx Juju, this is a go-to amulet in minion builds in general, so we're using this. This is your budget setup. Ring here, Dodra's Damning. Ideally, we would anoint Whispers of Doom right here, Whispers of Doom. All poison builds, you want Temp Chains and Despair, and, of course, we want to anoint Whispers of Doom, but Golden Oil's the most expensive oil. We can't afford Whispers of Doom on League Start, so we're not using that. Instead, we are just using Corruption right here. This is actually our single highest damage anoint right here. It's actually giving us 7.3% damage by just making our Wither stronger. And 2 blacks and a crimson, not the cheapest thing in the world, but it is a relatively affordable anoint on League Start. So we're just using that instead. Just a regular Amethyst ring with resistances and a little bit of life. This is just, regular old ring right here, nothing crazy. 80% Darkness Enthroned. Obviously, you would want 100% if you can get it, but this is just middle of the road right now. In terms of the flasks, we want an anti-bleeding life flask, Granite Flask of Armor, Jade Flask of Evasion. I have a 12% Fizz taken as Taste of Hate. 15% would be better, but we're just keeping the numbers as low as possible. And then an Attack Speed Quicksilver. Then in terms of my jewels, I have a regular belt jewel here. These are the ones that I put in my belt. Is Attributes, Dexterity, Life, and then a little bit of Chaos damage. Like I said before, Dexterity is a pain in the butt. And I'm actually getting most of my dex right here from my Ghastly Eye Jewels in my Darkness Enthroned. Until you get a Darkness Enthroned, you can just use a Stygian Vise with stats and res and all that on it. Eventually, you want Ghastly Eye Jewels because that gives you a little bit of damage. And then we have 2 large cluster jewels right here. So these ones are 9 passive. 9 passive is not the most efficient. Good ones would be 12 passives. To emulate this in game, I did just take out 3 of my points. But in POB, you want it like this with the 9 passives right here. These are the regular jewels that I put in all of the passives. The key is you want 100% chance to poison. The nice thing that we're doing here to keep it as budget and accessible as possible is we're actually using chance to poison support for 40% chance to poison right there. And then we just have to stack 60% chance to poison on that. So I just have 13% rolls on all these guys, but it could even be bottom rolled at 10%. And in fact, let me change that in the POB so it is as clear as possible. So the large cluster jewels, I just have tier 2 increased effect. Tier 1 would be better, but we can go for tier 2. A little bit of life, a little bit of res, and then the other large cluster jewel is a little bit of chaos res and life, but again, just tier 2 increased effect. So very accessible, 9 passive, whatever jewels. You can just get a lower eye level for that. Nothing crazy on these guys. And I was using a Fortress Covenant, but I see that it is a few divines on League Start. So we're going to drop that and just use a regular jewel right there. So I took that out, and you can see we didn't lose very much damage. So yeah, that's my proposal right there for a potential League Start, a low-budget, entry-level version of the Holy Relic of Conviction. Particularly this league right now, if you're looking to put it together, you could kind of look at that as a stepping stone to get into the higher investment version. Honestly, all you really have to do from here is get a +1 socketed lightning coil, toss on an ashes, get a level 4 enhance, whatever. Figure out how to hit that exact breakpoint right here. You want to hit these cooldown breakpoints. And if you get to 82% quality, then you really, really can feel it pop off. And it just becomes an incredibly smooth and fun build. And yeah, I'm going to put a pin in this right here, because I don't think after last league, especially looking at league starters and making videos about it, I just couldn't believe that they nerfed SRS. Like, I thought that, you know, they nerfed SRS, they nerfed Tornado Shot. They even nerfed my Ball Lightning of Orbiting Archmage thing that I was looking at. Very, very disappointing. So I'm not going to worry about that right now. And we're going to keep exploring. I actually want to go on the opposite end, and I'm going to kind of figure out if I can resurrect my Cast on Crit Assassin from last league. So that's the project for next week. I hope you guys join me for it, and thanks for watching. See ya.